So today we are going to talk about technology. And we are talking about technology in all its aspects. We have the expertise here. And we want to make sure that everybody, by the time we leave this forum, we all understand what technology is. Everybody says we need it. I think the Adedeji lecture was very, very informative. Dr. Manyuk simplified the whole technology to a layman's language. We all know that we need infrastructure. We need broadband. We need satellite. We need to make sure that we have a strategy, a policy in place. We all know that we need to use it for everything from financial inclusion to really connecting the governments, connecting schools, connecting health centers. We know that we need it for ordering food if we need it. We need it for everything. And this is the time that we want to talk about it. But also want to talk about how do we make sure everybody is connected? How do we make sure that everybody benefits from this important technology, including the artificial intelligence? So here we are going to be discussing with our panelists here, but before that, we want to make sure that we understand what it is and also the taxation part of it. If you have to scale it up, it means you have also to do some magic in terms of taxation. Do you overtax? Do we just not tax? What's the middle ground that we need to use to make sure that we can encourage the whole penetration of the broadband and making sure that it can contribute to jobs, to economic growth? Here, I want to invite, again, Hanan. I think we've been doing a lot today, but that's what you are paid for. So I want you to just give us a hint from the studies of some of the 6 countries in terms of taxation of technology, which you want to make sure that everybody has access. And the wonders, the magic that comes out of that is going to help the debate here on the panel.
I'd like to, I'll be very briefly just presenting some of preliminary findings that have been done in ECA, looking at, optimizing ICT sector excise taxes. If we can move to the next slide, and perhaps if I can have the clicker. So we did some initial studies on 6 African countries based on available data. This included Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, and Nigeria. And the objective or the aim is that we extend it to all other African countries and to look at this issue in depth. Next. As you can see, and as this panel will be discussing in more detail, we have really issues in terms of internet penetration and cost in the continent. So you can see here in the heat map that the share of internet users in Africa remains actually on average 30-something%, and you can see how it varies across countries. And then the cost of mobile internet in Africa also remains high. It's actually the highest across regions worldwide. With some countries, the cost of 1 gigabyte is $20 or more, if you can imagine. So, okay. This tells us that the fact that we don't have that access and penetration and issues of cost will impact how we can benefit from the sector, especially in light of the lecture we've heard, because there are both direct and indirect benefits. In terms of direct benefits, it contributes to domestic resource mobilization, government revenues, job creation, issues of providing payment systems and e-services, and indirectly through capital accumulation, better productivity, expanding markets, and deepened social inclusion. The ICT sector, in terms of impact of GDP, is estimated for, globally for 10% increase in mobile broadband penetration. The estimates usually range from 0.8% to 2.5% of additional GDP growth. In Africa, we are more on average on the higher side, which is the 2.5% of GDP, because of course of the initial conditions for the continent. And here, as you can see in the presentation, we have some estimates across countries of what does it mean or how it translates an 10% increase in penetration across the countries that were in the case studies. And you can see that the range varies from 140 million US dollars in Uganda to 1.3 billion US dollars in Nigeria. In terms of job creation, that's also another, very positive impact for expansion and growth of the sector. Of course, it's the backbone of e-commerce and digital services, but also, and I'm sure as we will hear, the issue of increasing internet speed will also increase efficiency, create jobs, and particularly with the projection of how much the digital economy is projected to grow to 180 billion US dollars by 2030, the issue of the lagging behind in penetration and cost will be detrimental. So it's very important to resolve this issue. Finally, in terms of optimizing the excise taxes for the sector, what we found is that actually doing so, and in the cases we looked at, it was reducing excise taxes, can actually broaden broadband penetration, drive revenue growth through enhanced productivity, and expand the tax base, supporting both growth and job creation. I'd like to emphasize that these are still preliminary, and the work will be expanded to include more countries and to look in depth also in terms of impact of regulation, competition, and issues of infrastructure, existing infrastructure, in driving these issues of cost and access. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you very much, DS Hanan, for this. It's a summary. We are doing a study to make sure that we understand what will be the appropriate taxation for the technology, having in mind that we need this one to be accessible by everyone. So we started with 6 countries. What came out very, very clearly is that the moment you reduce taxes, then the economy grows, and at the same time it creates more jobs, and it increases the penetration. What we have also seen from this is that because technology is very much easy to tax, and there's no leakage of any kind, that's where the finance ministers, like my good friend Ndungu, is always tempted to tax as much as you can, because that's where he's under pressure to deliver. That becomes easy. And what we are saying here is that the technology is taxed like any other company. But in addition to that, there are sector-specific taxes. And yet, on the other hand, we want as many people as possible to make sure they have a smartphone, to make sure they can buy airtime, and be able to do any business they want to do. Now, we have to strike a balance. How much taxation would that one be? And we are also rolling it out. This is just the beginning. These are preliminary results, but we are rolling out to all countries on the African continent so that you can all see yourself and can decide what you want to do. But here, as we have all the experts, except the AI expert who is not here, here we have almost everyone. Let me start from the other end. From Smart Africa, the Didier Nkurikinfra, who is a senior expert, but at the same time is the Director General. He's going to tell us, of course, what is happening, because Smart Africa is for the entire continent. We have my good friend, Professor Ndungu, who has been on the market for quite a long time, has experience, and also has been promoting technology here. Habari yako? And then we have here, of course, Minister Bakri, Deputy Minister of Finance. Kushe, everybody. Yes, yes. And then we have, of course, my good friend. We had a very good meeting yesterday, Minister in charge of Communication and Digital Economy, Mr. Usman Ba. Thank you so much, really, for being here. We're going to have a discussion, and sometimes I want to make sure that we really come up with some new innovations. I know Sierra Leone very well, and I know Sierra Leone can develop very fast. It is investing in technology, and I wanted to see, from your own understanding and from the presentation, how do you optimize the taxation in such a way that it does not have an impact on the access, on the penetration that we are talking about, but at the same time, how do we make sure that everybody in Sierra Leone, from Freetown to Bo, to Kenema, to Makeni, everywhere, everybody has access? Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. You can see that you are well grounded in terms of the Sierra Leonean history. So I'm so happy that I know somebody that knows Sierra Leone very well. Thank you very much for inviting me to this panel. First of all, I think I was quite amazed by the Vision 2063, which says that build the Africa that we want. But before I proceed, I just want to highlight some statistics here, just to create the narratives so that I can be able to expand on the discourse. Africa with 1.48 billion, 54 countries, and 30.37 square kilometer, compared to America, which is USA, 331 million, with 50 states and 9.834 square kilometer. Africa is about 5 times the population of the US, whilst in terms of land size, we are more than three times the land size. Unfortunately, doing my research, I realized that the cost of 1 gigabyte in terms of mobile, because it's very critical when it comes to digital transformation. Based on the figures I saw on the internet for Zimbabwe, appears to be the highest. My figures as of November shows me $43 per 1 gigabyte, whilst Malawi is 38 cents. And America, with that population, is averaging at 0.8 cents. Why did I say that? Because for me, basically, digital financial services is very critical. If we want to ensure we have a stable digital financial space, we have to ensure we have the right technology. Unfortunately, in Africa, even when you look at South Africa, there are various price range. In Sierra Leone, what we have done over time, we've been able to do a lot of reforms, and of recent, we've been able to develop the field mapping, excise tax by SICPA, and recently we were able to develop the revenue assurance around betting, mobile application, and mobile money. Because what we've seen over time, the way the banks, the mobile money operations are going on, is quite huge. So over time, what we've realized in Africa generally, most of these services have not been taxed. And we are fortunate in Sierra Leone, about 3 years ago, we're able to charge about 1.5%, whilst the other countries are charged about 5%. So the issue of harmonization generally in Africa in terms of technology, I think, is the problem. If we say they have 50 states in America, but they have one price. But we have in Africa 54 states, they have varying prices, and the cost of technology is quite massive. So for me, I think that is a concern. Africa needs to take a step forward, how we can harmonize the rates in terms of technology and also penetration. But there are challenges. For me, the high rate of corruption in terms of the normal taxation has been a problem. So that's why the need for a digital financial services tax is very important. Also, political pressure is also part of the issues that we face when it comes to taxation. Another issue is that ineffective tax laws and reform. There is a need for strong tax revolution, and in that case, I think the UN can play a place here. The UN Commission for Africa, there is a strong need to try to harmonize the tax policy across Africa, and also the high rate of evasion. Africa is losing almost about 89 billion, and with the impact of digital financial services, there is a strong need that we can be able to change that curve, because about 89 billion averagely is going out of Africa when it talks in terms of tax. But again, it has a social effect, because if you bring in digitalization in terms of tax, it's going to affect employment. Okay, but at the end of the day, it will reduce employment, it will reduce labor forces, and also the disappearance of certain companies. But however, with a robust digital financial services, it can stimulate consumption, which I think at the end of the day it will improve the supply capacity and also improve on a sustainable economy. For me, I think that's the case. We have to look at, forget about the negatives, but there are huge benefits when it comes to implementation of digital financial services in our taxonomy, because it has a greater impact unlike in Sierra Leone. Over time, we've seen a growth of almost 2% of GDP from when we start introducing digitalization, because we are now able to integrate a tax system. We have the issue of the SIC panel coming in. Even when it comes to duty waivers, the Asikuda plus is now what we are instituting. So we continue to strive to see how we can optimize as we move along in terms of digitalization. But we believe that Africa needs to harmonize in terms of infrastructure. The cost needs to go down. And if we are able to come as one, as what is happening in the US, I believe there has been a big space in terms of how we manage our economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister, for that. Now let's go to Kenya, from West Africa now to East Africa. Professor, you know we've been together for a long time. You are the one who was behind. I was wondering at some point whether you are governor of the central bank or whether you are the governor of M-Pesa. Because I know that you did a lot, you followed up, and it contributed quite significantly to the financial inclusion which you are all doing. I remember we are trying to compete among ourselves for the core banking system so that it can work for the financial sector and in terms of the financial inclusion. Just tell us, at this point, we heard in the morning, Google is in Kenya, M-Pesa is still there, there are many others who are there. What are the new initiatives again now? Can you update us in the fintech area in Kenya? And how do we see Kenya going forward really as a leader?
Thank you very much, and I'm very, very happy to be here. And I want to thank you for bringing the Ministers of Finance here as ECA that we have done annually. I missed that bit when I wasn't available, but also the reception we have got from the government of Zimbabwe. Of course, when I come here, I get a lot of new good things that are coming up. I'm very happy that Hanan was able to present something that brings us back to thinking about policy. And one of the realizations is that why you focus on excisable products is because you know the demand function. And it means that the demand function is sensitive. And so it means you can actually get the optimal taxation of an excisable product. And you know when, if you go beyond the optimal, you know what happens. That's why you're getting those fantastic results. The beauty of it is that once we leave something behind, when you go beyond the optimal tax rate, then obviously you start deterring that structure. You get less revenue. But let me say that I'm happy that when we started this, I've seen the brief that have come to me was that we want to deal with policies, we want to deal with the institutions and even instruments in the financial system, but what I thought was forgotten is that we need to look at interventions. We have failed in our endeavor for financial inclusion because some interventions are needed. Let me give you an example. While I left my tour of duty of central banking, where we started we started mobile phone financial services, and all of a sudden it was embraced by banks, and we started digital lending. We again followed it up with CRBs, credit reference bureaus, to strengthen the market, and of course to analyze and price risk. And then somewhere, we started seeing that the market was very, very important because they came up with credit scoring system. That was good. But all of a sudden, the credit scoring system was not talking to CRBs. And then all of a sudden, like in Kenya, we had, like, you already blacklisted in credit reference system, yet you have credit scoring system. So you can see that an institutional mechanism can fail us. And that is where institutions become very, very important. I do believe, and I think because the journey for financial inclusion starting all the way back in 2009, East Africa did very well. But somehow, somewhere, our institutions started maybe losing the path towards what we really need to get to. Let me present maybe 4 cases of where we can actually restart the process. First, we still have to go back to the drawing board in terms of connectivity, because we are going to talk about digital finance. And for us to succeed in digital finance, no one should be left behind. So we have to go into the physical infrastructure. That's the fiber optic. The East African led the way, but we are still having them in major towns and major cities. But we have to go down to the totality of the whole country. And in the African setting, you know, fiber optics becomes the physical infrastructure. And the private sector has to bring the core infrastructure to ride on physical infrastructure. That's how lowering costs of doing, or transactions cost becomes very, very important. That is something that we have to make sure that we do, because it is mass scalability of that service that becomes very important. Second, we have to fight for interoperable solutions. When I was with him as the governor, he was the governor of the National Bank of Rwanda, and myself in Kenya, and our late brother Ben Onduru, we started talking about interoperable payment system then. But I think right now we have moved to interoperable solutions, because it is not one solution. We have to look at systems. For example, the first mover advantage creates dominance in so many markets. But the way to solve it is not actually to say that, oh, let us cut the feet of the first mover. No. The best thing is, if it's physical infrastructure, come up with leasing arrangements. If it's payment system, come up with the structures of payments. So interoperable solutions are diverse, and they are very important to talk about. The third is that in most countries, and trying to secure this system, and we know, I'm sure there are people who will also talk about cyber attacks and all that. We have seen what happens in cryptocurrency world. We need IDs. We need digital IDs to protect the market. Not to curtail the market, not to know who is transacting, but to protect the market. And we know that, for example, in Kenya, we succeeded in mobile phone financial services just because we have an identifier, but we need to move further to a better system. And finally, we have to understand, at the end of the day, development is an institutional makeup, DNA, that we really need to push. We have to develop the market. In fact, Mr. Chairman, when I wanted to start with markets and how markets development were working, but let me add with that point. We have to develop the markets. The work of the regulator and institutional builder is actually to nudge the market to the optimal solution, nudge the market to the optimality. But make sure that you also protect the market. And finally, once you have done all that, you have to make sure that you regulate the market. Regulation is not to force the market, but actually to make sure that you are just reminding the market about the rules of the game. If we follow those points, Mr. Chairman and moderator, I do believe that that is where we have dropped the thread. And we have to go back in most countries, and in Kenya I reminded them, we have to go back and pick the thread where we dropped it, because we have to go back in that sense. Thank you.
Yeah, that is Professor Ndongo, but you cannot get off the hook. I know that you are leading in terms of the war between tech companies and banking system. Who should be able to move the money around? Should it be the banks or the tech? How do you resolve that issue? Secondly, I know that you are leading in terms of using the banking system and the technology that we had to make sure that we can have regional payment system in local currencies. Can you also enlighten us on that?
Yeah, that is a big topic today, but the most important thing is that we have, I think the most important thing is to say that nobody escapes the regulatory net. That's the most important thing. But what are the fintechs doing? The fintechs are just trying to revolutionize what we have covered in previous cases. So in a sense, what we are really saying is that we can actually have functionality in terms of regulating fintechs. Of course, this world is also being confused with so many other aspects of it, and that's why I was avoiding most of the issues, because at the end of the day, the banking world, we want to make sure that we promote the banking world and identify ourselves in terms of what the banking world is doing. But it does not create a new environment for regulation. It actually enhances exactly what we have been doing. That's why we don't want to create separate regulation for fintechs. We want actually to say that the same regulations we have for the functionality of the financial system is the same functionality we're going to continue with. I'm sure once the fintechs have talked, we can add more space in terms of the arguments that I have had. I've published a few papers lately on the regulating fintechs, but I've argued that we have functional relationship between what they are doing and what is the core business of the banks. The most important thing is that we have seen that the banks, the traditional way of banking, has moved a notch higher. It has moved a notch higher because it has been supported by the fintechs, the innovative approach to the fintechs. Today, when I was talking over lunch, I reminded someone that my first paper to write was in Brookings, and I argued that innovative regulated technology is the one that is going to swing the day. But I did follow up with another paper in the Center for Global Development, just when I had left the central bank, and I said that state capacity can ruin the process of digitization or digitalization. We still, of course, even talked about digitization and the design of public finance with the IMF, for example. So we have a lot that we can talk about. Bringing it together is actually to say that there's some functionality when you come to regulation. And we want to make sure that we do not kill with new regulations, with the new streams of regulations, but we want to make sure that they are functional regulations. Maybe I can come back to that after listening to the others. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Now let's go to the Honorable Minister of Communication and Digital Economy in the Gambia. Yesterday we had a meeting, and I was very much impressed with what Gambia is doing in a more structured manner. We talked quite a lot about digital ID, about connecting the entire government, about trying to see how you can connect the citizens so they can get the basic services that you'll get from anywhere, and also to make sure that as you roll out the whole entire technology, there is a policy behind it. It's not just rolling out. Can you enlighten us on what is happening in the Gambia? Maybe there is...
Thank you. Thank you very much. First of all, thank you for inviting me in this panel. I really appreciate it, and I'm glad to be here. First of all, I want to commend the Minister of Finance from Kenya for the good insight you have shared with us in terms of what you guys are doing in Kenya in terms of digital inclusion in the fintech. Let me go back to in the early 90s. Before I get to Gambia a little bit, I live in the Silicon Valley for about 27 years of my life. If some of us who are a little older who can remember AOL, and who can remember Yahoo when they came. AOL, at one point in the US, they have almost every domain of every citizen that's using AOL in the US on their fingertip. But they were not innovative enough to think about the next 20 years, how technology would evolve and merge. They didn't do nothing with it. So what happened? When Google came, when Microsoft picked up, they lost the market. We go back to Yahoo. Yahoo also had the same. They came before Google. They had the market, most of the market share in the US. But they didn't do nothing with that data, that gold data they had on their fingertip. So it is what we call in strategy the 5P, proper preparation, prepare you for proper performance. So coming back to the Gambia in 2022, taking the portfolio, in the Gambia, if some of us who know a little bit about the Gambia, for the last 22 years, we were in a dictatorship ruled by government, military government. It is only 7 years ago when we have a democratic government. And within these 7 years, the first administration was basically a coalition. So this is the first 5 years we have a pure democratic government. Our president being recognized the most peaceful president in all of Africa. So received the award this year in Mauritania. So what I'm trying to say here, first, you have to have peace before all these things we are talking about in technology, innovation. Without peace, you can't build these things. In the Ministry of Communication and Digital Economy in the Gambia was established just less than 2 years ago, in 2022, June. So when I took over the ministry, I look at the ecosystem in the Gambia, basically infrastructure, policy, regulation, all these things. What are the citizens complaining every day? What are they talking at the barber shop? What are they discussing at the flea market? What are the things that is core in their discussion when they're out of their homes? Especially the millennium. One was, other than football, I would say, one was internet costs. Everybody wants to have access to internet. It's so expensive. So I have traveled intensively globally, but when I look at a few years ago, I traveled, my first year in office, I traveled to Mauritius and I went to Rwanda several times. I always use these two countries because if you look at Mauritius, it's 1.3 million population. It's less than Gambia, which is 2.5 million population. So today, the cost of 1 gigabyte in Mauritius is less than 99 cents. Why? Who can answer that question in the audience? Why? Anybody? You get free dinner and free breakfast. So the answer to that question is Mauritius has 3 submarine cables. So that means accessibility and capacity. When you have the capacity, you can provide access. So the Gambia have only 1 submarine cable. And that 1 submarine cable has only 3 years or less lifetime left. So my first point of duty was, how can we provide this ecosystem to support the long-term scale, to support a rapid development adoption on utilizing technology to improve the outcome across all sectors. So first, you have to have the connectivity. And in order to have the connectivity, you have to have the capacity. And in order to have the capacities, you need a submarine cable. But that was not good enough. Just a second submarine cable, which we are lucky, as of today, we can say we have been blessed with the World Bank has given us the fund to secure the second submarine cable coming from Keva to the Gambia. And hopefully by 2025, mid-year, we will launch that, inaugurate that in the Gambia. So what we did, we look at what are the things we need to do in terms of preparing what we call digital transformation. digital transformation is not a process, it's not an application, it's not a system, it's a vision with a purpose, and a purpose with a destiny, and a destiny with an address. So this digital transformation required collaborative effort, both private sector and government. Government cannot do it alone. So we look at a small nation like Gambia. Why can't we be like Mauritius or Rwanda? There's only one thing that can stop us to get there, which is the commitment, the will, and the drive. So we have what we call 5 pillars in the Gambia for our digital transformation. The Honorable Minister of Finance from Kenya mentioned about digital ID. Digital ID in every nation, without a digital ID, you cannot prepare your economy, period. You need to know how many people are graduating from high school, from college. You need to know how many unemployment. You need to know how many people are born in each day in your country, or month, or year. So you need to know all this gold data. You cannot get it without a digital ID. So we have 5 pillars that we have prepared or want to institute for our digital transformation. 1 is the submarine cable, obviously. 2 is the data center. We can have all these great things, but if we don't have a data center where we can store this data securely, it's meaningless. So then we need the digital ID, which is the foundation. You talked about mobile payment, mobile money, security. These things are very important, and without the digital ID, you cannot do that. So looking at Gambia, today, the 3rd pillar we have is the payments system, the national switch. In the Gambia today, 95% of our transaction is handled by cash. What does that do? It increases corruption. You cannot reduce corruption without having a digital solution exclusively. The other one is the payment systems, the e-government, excuse me. The e-government, we have 22 ministries in our country, and each of these ministries are hosting their data application in silo. So in order to do what you just mentioned earlier, Honorable Minister, about interoperability, in order to connect these ministries, to be able to talk to each other. I was on a panel a couple days ago, and I asked them, today, if the Ministry of Agriculture want to provide rice, supply rice to all the police force in the Gambia, how do you get that data? You would have to write, and maybe it'll take you 2 weeks before you can get that on a spreadsheet. So this is why it's important, if we have the interoperability in one government database, that we can abstract this information within seconds or minutes or seconds. So the Gambia, if you look at the demographic, 42% of the population are below 15 years old. So we have a lot of opportunities, and we have to prepare these young kids for tomorrow. 21% are between 15 and 24 years old, and 3.2% are 65 years and above. So this is something we have to really, really look at seriously and prepare for our youngs tomorrow. And for that, I would pause here for the next question. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So this is how exciting I was telling you. At least if you're not impressed, I was. You know, once you have the digital ID, which is going to help in terms of the Credit Reference Bureau and all other things, you know, that you do is just on your digital ID, the data center, the submarine cable. In the rollout, of course, you need also energy, but also the payment system, the integrated financial management system that really removes anybody else except the machines, and also the interoperability, which we all know. Thank you very much, Honorable Minister. And now let's go to Charles. And here everybody wants the public services to improve. And want to be reassured that Google will be there to make sure that this is a revolution. But at the same time, the issue of interoperability that we kept hearing here, I remember when we were rolling out the MasterCard, the Visa, and other things, the big buzz was interoperability. And we were all looking for the switch. And here we also have the emerging technologies like blockchain and others that are coming almost every year. How are you preparing yourself to keep on leading to make sure that we have these things are also interoperable?
Thank you so much. Absolute pleasure to be here on behalf of James as well. So a couple of key points that you've raised is what are we going to do, especially around technology, when you're seeing new technology coming up, and how does public sector really take advantage of that? And I think the first thing that we're going to talk about is the role of government in terms of being able to service the consumers and its citizens, which is absolutely critical. Because technology really is just about creating that level playing field, as Minister Ba mentioned, so that we can really service and grow the economies of our citizens to have a better life. That's a really critical component. So when you talk about blockchain, I actually want to step back a little bit and talk about what the foundational technologies are doing, and then how blockchain comes in to be able to service, which is one element of the ways that government can be able to service their citizens. So when we're looking about, when we're thinking about technology, we think about what are the key needs that technology can be able to solve for the citizens within the country. And blockchain has some really fundamental solutions that they can solve in terms of challenges that the economies are facing. For instance, when it comes to land rights, that is something that is really challenging. A lot of us know that there's corruption, as you mentioned, Minister Ba, and a solution that blockchain really solves for is how can you be able to track the ownership of land from one person to the next. And that really is fundamental. And the reason for that is that it provides comfort for people who are investing in a particular country to be able to know that once they invest in a piece of land, that they actually own it. That is one example that blockchain can be able to bring to help accelerate economic transformation. The second piece I want to bring regarding blockchain is around health. One of the biggest challenges that we've found within the health space is that a majority of medicine across the continent are actually fake. And they're really causing a lot of challenges within the health ecosystem. And this came up especially during COVID-19, but it's been a problem across the board. So the ability to be able to trace the source of medicine from the origin all the way to the chemist, to the end consumer, is another solution that really blockchain can be able to help with. But going back to the previous talk around artificial intelligence, when you think about blockchain, all of this can really be accelerated by leveraging artificial intelligence, which sort of brings it all together. Because when you think about artificial intelligence, it's what we're calling a general purpose technology. So it's a technology that really you can be able to overlay on almost every other single technology that currently exists to improve it, but also look at different sectors of economy, whether it's agriculture, whether it's land rights, whether it's health or education. You can be able to overlay this general purpose technology to be able to help citizens and really solve some of the challenges that we're currently facing. And even when I think about our Minister of Finance in Kenya, when it comes to taxes, you can be able to accelerate both the collection and reduce leakage of taxation, again, by applying some of these general purpose technologies. So when you think about the technology and how we can leverage it to accelerate economic growth, we think that we can be able to apply both blockchain, but even beyond blockchain, think about AI and really apply it across different sectors of society.
Wow. Well, given what you are talking about artificial intelligence, I'm just wondering whether it is still artificial. Maybe this is real. Yes, yeah. Thank you so much, really, for this. Now let's come back to Smart Africa. First of all, we want to know what you are doing for our continent. How many countries are coming on board? Because you want to make, I'm sure that all of them smart. And then we know that, of course, you are not only the Director General, but you are the only chief in charge of strategy. And we want to know your plans when it comes to data management. Data is becoming now the food almost that we eat every day. And there has been quite a lot of problems that are happening for many other countries, the challenges. How do you really advocate, or how do you manage the data? And also, how do you make sure that there is also the privacy that goes with it, that is also safeguarded?
Thank you very much, Excellency, and good afternoon to everyone. I know that this is an important topic because when we talk about technology, we want to look at it as, we want to compare it to electricity. You can only value the importance of electricity when it's gone. I think when you stay at home, when you're following your program at the TV, and suddenly electricity goes off, then you realize how important electricity is. Or sometimes we can compare it also to fertilizers, especially for ministers of finance. You know that without fertilizers, you can still have an output. But when you put fertilizers, it actually increases the output. So Smart Africa has been created purposely for that, to accelerate the use of technology. I'm not sure if it's on my side. Yeah. Back in 2013, this one? Okay. Thank you. So back in 2013 in Kigali, 7 presidents met. They met to share a common vision for the continent, and they created Smart Africa. Some of you were probably there. It was during the Transform Africa Summit, and they invited other heads of state to join this important undertaking. And from there, Smart Africa has grown to 39 countries, which represent approximately 1.1 billion people. You may ask yourself, why not all the 50+ countries in Africa? It's because what Smart Africa was calling was really the highest level of leadership at the head of state level. And countries which are ready to embark into this vision join anytime when they are ready. So it looks at many specific agenda, and one of them, Ambassador, is what you brought at the very beginning of this discussion today about how to increase affordability so that more people can have devices and more people can use the internet. When you look at the numbers today, there is 10, 15 years ago, in the around 2005, 2006, the continent was not connected. Fiber optic were being deployed in the US, in Europe, but Africa was largely unconnected. Since then, there's been significant investment. Fiber optic is running into countries, in countries. We have submarine cable around the continent. We have some of the large big techs who are like Facebook, which is deploying the largest network of the largest fiber optic across in the world, especially in Africa. And mobile network operators also have invested a lot. But when you look at the numbers, just about 20% of people in Africa use the internet. And you have 60% who are covered by the internet, but they're not using the internet. I repeat the numbers because I think that's probably important. 60. They have a network, they have a coverage, 2G, 3G, 4G, but they cannot use. Why? Because it's not affordable for them. So what does it mean? It means that they cannot contribute or participate into the economy. We relating also to the impact it has on GDP growth. They cannot contribute. It means that they cannot create jobs. There are some jobs that they'll not be able to create. They cannot have access to information. They cannot have access also to government services. So what they do, they are limited. And there's a small percentage of them who have phones, but which are not smartphones. They can only call, receive messages, SMS, and so on, but they cannot access the internet. So we are driving this important conversation, and I think this paper that UNECA has presented to us just at the beginning of this panel is very important. And I would like to add our voice, Smart Africa, on this important conversation. Can we look at new ways to stimulate the growth of the usage of internet? If we leave this place with just one commitment to say, let's consider, for example, taxation, but not for every type of devices. We've realized that devices of $50 are smart enough. I'm not talking about the iPhone of $1,500 or $2,000, because those people who buy them with $1,500, they can pay those taxes anyway, right? If someone can afford $1,500 smartphone, maybe it's not concerned. But talking about targeted tax, considering removing that taxes for those low-end devices, but also the internet, because many countries have VAT. They also have excise taxes, duties, and so on and so forth. There are a lot of taxes. So we are willing to work with some of the countries, and we've seen some countries already introducing revision in the tax regime to learn from it, to ensure that those gains are passed to the end users, because sometimes the mobile network operators in the middle can actually capture all those gains. So by working with regulators, we can make sure that these are passed to the end user. So this is just to add that, first of all, my voice and the voice of Smart Africa into this very important conversation, and to invite countries who would like to walk this journey and share with the rest of the continent what are the result or the outcome that came from that. So connectivity is one of our major focus at Smart Africa, but we also look at the uptake of digital services and the use of data. And that's why I'm coming to the question you were referring to just a few minutes ago about data. Data is important. We call it the new oil. And if you look at the top 20 companies, they're data companies. My brother Charles from Google can attest that they have a market cap that is over $1 trillion because of data. They are simply working with data. But today, data is scattered or it's not captured at all, so which prevent the use of data or gaining value out of data. So we've been working very closely with countries, supporting them, first of all, to have a data strategy. How do you capture data in the country? How do you connect the different data set so that you can extract value? You can also add more visibility, bring these to the hands of Minister of Finance so they can plan better, for example, whether it's education, agriculture, and so on. But also data is important, but safety and security of data is important. So we align with the Malabo Convention. In 2014, the AU passed the Convention on Cybersecurity and Personal Data Protection. And last year, it entered into force after Mauritania ratified the Malabo Convention. It's a solid framework, a robust framework that we encourage countries to adopt, and we support also the countries to make the most of this by working with them, by training them. We have the Smart Africa Digital Academy that has been training the data protection authorities, those ones who handle the use of data in countries. We've also encouraged mutual recognition of data, because what the US and China has more than us is that they have a large market. The US has over 300 million people, China has over 1 billion people. But in our respective countries, we brought in the physical division of our countries or the physical boundaries of our countries in the digital space. So when we look at our laws, especially our data laws, they are really within those boundaries, and we don't tap into the opportunity of larger markets. So what we've been actually exploring is how to allow mutual recognition of data, of course with preserving confidentiality, preserving issues related to safety, but how can we create that market, that 1.4 billion people market, by allowing data to move? Because data is moving. So we also heard about AI. AI will consume a lot of data, and we've been also active on that space to ensure a safe use of data and also a use of data for the common good. And last but not least, I would like also to mention the Smart Africa Trust Alliance, which is the first framework that has been put in place to allow this safe use of data between countries. So data is definitely, we are in the era of data. Actually, that was probably several years ago. Now we're in the era of AI, but for that we need really to create an environment to allow it to succeed. So in a few words, that's some of the initiatives in which we are focusing, and we accompany countries in this digital transformation that they are going through.
So I really thank our team here, and next time will be number one, will not be the last one. And I definitely want to also thank our team here. I didn't want to continue. I've been telling my team, I think last time, that given one of my background as a diplomat, I always kept remembering a diplomat who gave a speech for 3 hours. And after 2 hours, half of the people had left. But when he finished, only one person was left. So he turned around and asked, why are you still here? He said, because I'm the next speaker. So I don't want. So I think thank you so much for being patient and for being here. And we see each other tomorrow. Thank you so much.